Hello everyone, and let's get things going. So what is a class? A class is a schema for an object that can save many values. As an example, let's create an object. Const person is equal to name can be something like Melissa. Then we can have an age of, let's say, 24, and we can say something like is working to be equal to true. These are three different properties. Now look at this example. We have three different values, Melissa, 24, and true. And all three different values are of different types, string, number, and boolean. We will create a class and we're going to provide it with these keys, name, age, and working. Then we have to call our schema and pass in the values for these keys. So to do that, let's create this new structure called a class. Class person is going to be equal to, no more equals here, it's just an object. So this is how we declare a class. Class person and then object signs. This is not, of course, an object, this is a class. Now in there, we have something known as a constructor. And constructor is similar to parameters in a function. In here, we can pass all the things that it's going to accept. In this case, we want to pass in the keys, name, age, and is working. Now we have to set the same thing we did in the constructor object. This.name is equal to name. This.age is equal to age. And this.is working is equal to is working. In the code above, we say class person, and that is the way to initiate the class. The constructor is the receptor of values that we will send to create the object. And when we say this.name, we make the reference of the key name of the class and we assign it to the value that comes in the constructor, this name right here. So we already have the schema. This is it. What's next? We can initiate a variable with any name. It is always recommended to use a name that makes sense. In our case, since we have a person class, let's do something like this. Const user. Const user is equal to new person, and now we can create the same thing we had here. Let's pass in the values. In this case, it's going to be Melissa. Then the second thing is the age of 24, and then we have true. When we say new person, we're telling JavaScript to create a new object with the same schema that the class person has. So, to understand what JavaScript is doing with the values we're passing in, Melissa, 24, and true, check out this example. So, in here, we are receiving that Melissa, so let's copy it. And then we are basically setting the name to be Melissa. Then we are receiving the age of 24 and setting it here. And finally, is working becomes true. So we are basically creating an object that has these properties, same as it had here. Let's bring it back. And now let's console log our user. Before that, I'm gonna delete our first person here. Now, if we go down and say console log user, let's see how it looks like. As you can see, this is now a person type object that has a name of Melissa, is working to true, and age to 24. So why can't we declare our user like this using a normal object? Well, you absolutely can, and you should in most cases. The only way where the second approach would be more appropriate is when you have the schema for a specific thing. So all of these things need to follow a certain structure. So let's say that you have a person, then you have a second person with the name of John, age 12, working true. Then you have a third one, which is going to be 2, 3. This one is going to be something different, and so on and so on. You can see how we have a lot of code here, and every time we have to specify all of these properties. With the approach of using classes, what you can do is simply declare the constructor, and then you can create as many users as you want, and they're all going to follow the same thing. The only thing you have to change are the values. That's it. And now we're diving into a topic that is called object-oriented programming. Java is the most popular programming language that uses object-oriented programming, but JavaScript is turning away from it, at least from what I could personally notice in the last few years. So how would we do the same thing with it here using normal functions? Well, let me show you. let's create a function called createPerson. It's going to be an arrow function. And then in there, we're going to have our user, or we can say user schema. That's it. Our user schema is going to have three different things, as we always do. Name is going to be equal to nothing yet. We're going to populate it later. Then we have the age, and then finally we have the property is working, just like so. Now, what do you think? Where are we going to get the actual values for these properties? Well, the only thing you have to do is you have to call the createPerson and you have to pass them in as parameters. So let's say that our first thing is Melissa, 24, and then we have true. Now we get them here as params, name, age, and is working. Basically, now what you can do is you can use name, we can use age, and we can also use the is working coming from the props. Of course, we have to have commas here. Now, if you remember what I told you, if the key and the value of an object have the same name, then you don't have to declare it like this. What you can do is simply space it by commas. Now, that gives us our user schema. So the createPerson object, what is it going to do? Well, basically, it's going to return our user. So it's going to return our user schema like so. Now, finally, let's store our createPerson in a variable. Const user is equal to createPerson. And then we can say console log user. As you can see, we get our object right there. The one small improvement we could make is that considering we are using this user schema variable only once, we can immediately use the value out of it and not even create a variable. To take only the value, you can copy it and then simply return it immediately without the need to create an object. If you do that, you can see the output is the same. Now, if you're already a pro with arrow functions, then you know that this is an instant return, and we can simply do it in one line. If we do it like this, if we remove the return and stretch it all the way here, you might notice that there is a small thing that's inconsistent here. Usually, we just remove the return, remove the curly braces, and that's it. But we did that, right? But you can notice the curly braces are still there, and these belong to an object. So, to actually instantly return an object, you have to wrap it in parentheses, like that. Now we have our createPerson function, and it looks like this. As you can see, our output is still the same. We get back an object. This is the functional approach to solving the same thing we did before with classes. You can see we can create as many people as we want now, user 2, user 3, user 4, and we can simply console log them. They are all following the same schema. Let's just change the name to A, B, and C. As you can see, they are there. That's it. You didn't only learn about classes, the this keyword, and the new keyword, you also learned a bit about object-oriented and functional programming, and how in JavaScript, you're mostly going to use functions to do pretty much any task you want. And with that said, take a small break, and then we are moving to one of the last sections of the whole course, asynchronous JavaScript.